So, welcome back to the lecture series in animal physiology. So, previous class, so we are into week 7 and today we are starting the lecture 4 here. Okay. We are into week 7th, lecture 4, W7L4. So, in the previous class, we talked about some of the degenerative diseases of the brain, different parts of the brain and the spinal cord. Today we will talk about the patients who suffer from spinal cord injuries. So, in the earlier 3 case studies, when we talked about AD, PD and ALS, these two are at the level of the brain, this one at the level of the spinal cord, within it this was in the ventral horn, these two, one is at hippocampus and the other one is at substantia nigra SN. So, now again we will be dealing at these levels, the spinal cord injury, a big area in the Western world, mostly because of high speed driving and the severe impact which happens during accidents, which directly, so for example, if you think a person driving a vehicle, something like sitting in a car and driving a vehicle like this. So, whenever the impact comes, either a hit from the back or a hit in the front, this part of the body is the one which gets the maximum impact, and this maximum impact many a times or most of the time damages or stress the spinal cord tissue. So, this whole broad category of damages which are happening in the spinal cord leads to some form of a inflammation and injury. And in today's class, we will talk about how this inflammation progresses and what are the associated problems which kind of prevent or reduces the regeneration potential of the injured spinal cord motor neuron, and mostly it is the ventral horn motor neuron which are getting affected. So, let us again draw the spinal cord for your understanding. So, you can look at the spinal cord in 2 ways. You can take a side view like this when the impact is hitting it, either it may be a front impact or a back impact. Okay. So, this is the spinal cord. Okay. Now, if you look at the spinal cord when you are standing sideways, suppose I am standing like this and look at the impact and I am taking the hit here, right, or I am taking the hit here from the front or from the back. What happens is, so for example, I take a hit here. So, essentially if you kind of dissect out the spinal, kind of look at this a dissected view of the spinal cord, if this is the part of the spinal cord and then this is the ventral horn, and this is the central canal, and along the central canal you have a lot of population of neuronal progenitor cells which are sitting there all along, and here you are having the cell bodies of the motor neuron which are sitting as in different laminae, and they are transforming, or sorry, they are conveying signals to different set of tissues all over. Okay. So, the major impact happens out here. That side impact what you see falls on this, falls on this. So, now when such impact happens, it leads to some interesting set of reactions which happens there. So, this whole tissue is covered by a blood-brain barrier. So, whenever the impact happens, there are two things, two associated events which occurs. So, at this location where the impact has happened, the first thing which happens is damages the blood-brain barrier, damages the blood-brain barrier is one aspect which happens. One. Second, this leads to the injury to the motor neuron which are sitting at that location. Third important thing what happens is there is because of the damage of the blood-brain barrier, the influx of immune cells which either arise from blood because of damaged blood vessels, okay, influx of immune cells, and one more thing, there are some very dormant cells. If you remember when I talked about the classification I told you, on one hand you have neurons in the nervous system, you have set of glial cells in the system, and within the glial cells I told you there are Schwann cells, you have oligodendrocytes, you have astrocytes, and you have another family which is not truly glial cells as it emerged, called microglia. This microglia is a family of glial cells which are of immune cell origin, and these glial cells, unless otherwise provoked, do not, mark my word, do not take part in any kind of immune reaction. But if there is a damage here, there is an injury here, there is an influx of blood immune cells which includes WBCs and macrophages, then this triggers an action for this microglia to get to the site of injury. So, at the site of injury, or say for example this site, the site of injury. So, now we see there are essentially 4 events which are happening if I classify them A and B. Damage to the blood brain barrier, injury to the motor neuron, and influx of the immune cells from the damaged blood vessels, as well as the influx of the microglia, and microglia from dormant phase becomes active. Okay. This is how the initial set of reactions at the site of injury happens. Now, let us map it what will happen. Say for example, here on the ventral horn you have this motor neuron, okay, and its process is going like this. Now, say for example there is an injury. So, for example, there is an injury here. So, what will happen? This path is coming out fine, right? So, now this path is kind of getting discontinued. So, somewhere or other one has to repair this part or allow this one to grow and kind of form a contact and let it survive, or a new process has to come which will take it up and go to the site. Or if the injury is not very fatal, most of these motor neurons are in like a lamina, one on top of other. So, some degree of compromise can happen. This neuron may not work any further but the one which is sitting underneath it can do the job, but with certain degree of compromise. But that is a different scenario. So, scenario here is if there is a cut somewhere or other, either you insert a tube and this has to grow, and somewhere or other make a contact with this part, because the more this part of the axon which is disconnected now, I am putting it in a green color, in that case once again, the more time this spends. So, this blue stuff is going to will degenerate or die out. So, sooner we could make such a repair, or allow this neuron to extend this process further as a repair and really set the target. But as soon as this reaction happens, certain unique reactions takes place out here. First, I told you the blood brain barrier is, so BB stand for blood brain barrier is compromised. You could see the first thing, which is the injury to the axon, 1, blood brain barrier compromise. Third, as I mentioned you, so the macrophages started to rush to that area, and the microglia, which are otherwise very silent cells. So, these cells otherwise remains like this, spherical, but as soon as they become active, they become enlarged and they send out lot of philopodias and all sorts of processes, and they started rolling towards the injury site. And once all these different family of cells march into this site, in order to prevent any further damage, they form a very unique fluidic, you can call it like a pond, like a structure. So, something like this. So, for example, is a motor neuron. So, here is the injury, So here they will form a pond-like structure. So fluidic structure, and this is the part which is no more in connectivity. So this structure is called syrinx. Syrinx, interestingly, is a kind of pool of fluid which accumulates there in the spinal cord, which contains several molecules which are not allowing the neuron or the damaged neuron to grow, or in other words, axonal regrowth is prevented. Okay. So, one way, and there are a series of such molecules which are present in this complex fluid. Let me shade it with blue out here. This is structure called syrinx. So, one way one can think of bypassing this situation is that you somewhere or other have an access in your spinal cord and you developed antibodies against growth inhibitors, because there are molecules which are growth inhibitors. You develop antibodies and put the antibodies at that site. This is one approach. The second approach is you siphon out the fluid, siphon out the syrinx fluid and kind of do a dressing, which is risky indeed, because you are accessing into the area where these locations are very prone to infection. When you are penetrating something of that sort, you always carry the risk of infection. Third thing what you can do, so I told you, then you can develop antibodies which you can put there somewhere or other. How you manage, that's a different story. Some people at the rodent level, rats and all this kind of stuff, they are trying to develop conduit tubes like this, which kind of are being put like here. Let me read right. Say for example, here you have the syrinx structure, which is so they are putting these kind of tubes, microtubes out there, which could guide the axon to kind of cross this fluidic cavity and go to the other side. So essentially the idea is that injured axon regenerate and travel along it and come to this site like this, because the other areas, so these areas are not allowing the growth to happen. So how to bypass it? You can bypass it by having such conduit channels, and even some of the people are even using this conduit channels plus electroactive polymers. These electroactive polymers are being mixed, or these channels are even made with electroactive polymers in order to give stimulation. Electrical stimulation to the growth. kind of a growth promoting situation are being created. So there are several ways where people are attempting to address this issue, that how we can get around into this complex situation. And the reason to invest on these kind of situations are because your lifestyle is compromised very heavily. Say for example, these patients who are lower motor neuron are affected, say for example this part out here, they suffer from, like, they have issues with bladder issues, so they cannot pee, or they have issues to pass their urine, or they may have a defecation problem. Okay, some have issues in their, if they are wearing the gut, they have issues in the gut. So there are several parts of the body which are very severely, their functions are being compromised. And we, being part of this whole modern world where there is tremendous amount of thrust on driving and car industry, and of course that comes with all other problems of injury, road injuries and accidents. So every government across the world are investing a lot on it, but really the crux is really to get around it. So some of these fields are at this point, based on the fundamental research, are working on translational therapies. There is another aspect which I haven't highlighted yet. There are attempts which are being made. If you remember, when I was drawing this, I told you that this location has lot of those progenitor or stem cells present. So there are people who are attempting, could we activate those neural stem cells to become motor neuron. There are attempts which are underway to convert them, but whether they become motor neuron and then they will exactly follow the path, will exactly innervate that XYZ muscle, those are something for the future. We do not know. We do not have an answer. But there are people who are attempting, because along the line of the central canal, there are several neuroprogenitor cells which are sitting there. Is it possible in a controlled way we can divide them? We do not know, because again we are worried that that should not lead to some kind of tumor or some other neuroglial tumors. So it's a very tricky area for therapy, but there are efforts which are underway where people are trying to get around it, and only future will tell how soon we have an answer to this. So now we have covered different kind of pathologies of neurons, starting from neurodegeneration to injury. Next, what we will do is that we will talk about some of the problems of the glial cells, which we haven't talked about, because there is another population of the glial cells. So we have covered, if you look at it, we have talked about neurons, we have talked about microglia's activation, which may lead to worsening the conditions of spinal cord injury, and then we are left with the glial cells, where we will be talking about the Schwann cells and how they myelinate. We will talk about the oligodendrocytes, how they myelinate, and how some of these things leads to multiple sclerosis. So thank you, and thanks for your patient listening.